You ever hear a story so wild it almost sounds made up? Well, let me tell you, nobody in Redwater ever expected Jake, butler guy fixing clunkers in a shop nobody cared about, be the only man standing between life and death on the worst night the city had seen in years. And you know what? Neither did Jake. But life has a way of throwing you straight into the fire just to see what you're really made of. And let me back up a sec because that night, that storm, it changed everything. You see, the storm didn't just rattle windows or knock over trash cans. This thing rolled in like it had a personal grudge against Northern California, sending winds through Redwater's foundry district that made the metal walls of Butler's auto rattle like dice in a desperate man's palm. Jake was under the hood of an ancient Honda, arms covered in grease, when Tommy, his young apprentice, the kind of kid you hope your own son might turn out to be, came running in with news from his mom and the TV. Big storm, they said, power outages coming, stay safe. Jake grunted, half distracted, but deep down he knew he could feel it in his bones that this was no ordinary storm. Tommy offered to help button up the shop, and Jake, always stubborn, told him to finish the alternator job so Mrs. Henderson would have her car by morning. That's the kind of man he was. Never mind he was alone, his ex-wife and son off visiting family. Bills stacked up on his kitchen table. Redwater wasn't the kind of place you escaped easily. It was roots, it was memory, it was the kind of town that broke men and left them standing in the ruins. And Jake, well, he was just trying to hold the pieces together. The lights went out just like that, like someone had yanked the plug out of the world. Wind howling, rain hammering the windows, everything dipped into this kind of haunted silence. Tommy's phone chirped with warnings: power out for 24 hours, shelter in place, hope for the best. Jake played it tough, told Tommy to go home, lied about having a big generator in back. Truth was, he had nothing that would last more than a few hours. But that was Jake, for you always more worried about someone else than himself. Then the phone rang. Jake almost didn't answer, it was late. A weird number. Who could it be? But instinct kicked in, and that call changed everything. Maria Ramirez from Grandview Medical Center, panic at her voice, begged him for help. Hospital's backup power was gone. Patients on life support. Nobody else could fix it, they said. Frank from maintenance remembered Jake used to work on military generators. The kind of thing he never talked about. He could have said no. He wanted to. But when you've lived through war zones and heartbreak, you learn there's no such thing as waiting for someone better to show up. So Jake grabbed his tools, braced himself, and told Tommy, sometimes life doesn't give you the luxury of playing it safe. Yeah, that happened. Driving to the hospital was a nightmare. Streets flooded, power lines down, his old pickup nearly blown off the road. Sirens everywhere. Emergency crews fighting to keep order. Jake pushed through, headlights barely cutting the rain, and when he reached Grandview, the place looked like a fortress under siege. He marched in, so tired but ready. Maria was waiting. She led him to the basement, pitch black. Chaos everywhere, just the thrum of one dying generator trying to keep a hospital alive. Frank was already there, face grim, tools scattered, frustration written in every line. 3 generators, he explained. 2 dead, 1 overheating. Jake's mind snapped into focus, old training rushing back the way you see a problem, not as a disaster, but as a puzzle to solve. He listened. He checked fuel lines, electrical systems. Knew right away the maintenance was overdue. But what really got him was Maria's voice, telling him how many patients would die if he failed. That's a weight you can't shake. 45 minutes left, she said. Not enough time. But Jake didn't let it show. He sent Maria for battery updates, worked with Frank to bypass filters, and made calls for tools and chemicals. He was crawling through puddles of diesel and mud, hands moving on their own, brain racing for every shortcut he'd ever learned, improvising, praying, remembering the faces of men he'd saved, and some he hadn't, in the Army. There was a moment when everything seemed low-stand engine refusing to fire, a cooling system choked with junk, alarms blaring upstairs. Jake thought of his father, Roberto, who had spent his life working the Fairfield Pharmaceuticals line until the day they closed the plant and told him he was no longer needed. That loss, the slow spiral into debt and depression, haunted Jake more than any blackout. And that's when the twist landed. As the generators roared back to life, as Jake synchronized the systems and the ICU lit up, as nurses cheered and doctors rushed to save patients, word spread. An elderly woman in room 7, unconscious, no ID, but everyone could feel she was important. Later, as the dawn broke, as Jake watched the world outside start to rebuild, a corporate suit showed up. Margaret Fairfield. Name sent a chill down his spine. He didn't want to talk, but Margaret pressed. Her mother, Victoria Fairfield, was the woman in room 7. The same Victoria Fairfield whose company had killed the foundry, wrecked his father, shattered Redwater. And here's the thing. Jake realized he'd saved the life of the very person who had indirectly, maybe, but still destroyed his family. You know what I mean? Life's got a sick sense of humor sometimes. Margaret wanted to thank him. She offered him a job, big money, big responsibility. He could have told her to get lost. Instead, he asked for the truth. And she gave it to him, sort of, not the confession he wanted, but enough to show she understood the damage done. But here's where the real twist hit. Later, Victoria herself asked to see Jake. She looked him straight in the Iano legalese. No CEO attitude, and admitted what she'd done. Admitted regret. Said she remembered Roberto. Jake almost couldn't believe it, and for a second, all his anger and grief melted into something else. Respect, maybe. Relief, even. Because sometimes being seen, being acknowledged for the pain you carry is the closest you get to justice. Victoria doubled down. She wanted Jake to head up infrastructure for the company. Real money. But more than that, she offered to fund a program for the families wrecked by that old plant closure, set up a memorial, give him the freedom to do things right. For a mechanic from the foundry, it was the kind of opportunity you don't see twice. So what do you do, huh? You take the job and risk everyone calling you a sellout? Or do you walk away, keep fixing clunkers in a dying neighborhood, carrying your pride like a cross? Jake looked out at the city. His city saw his son's message calling him a hero, thought about all the nights his own father lost sleep so he could have a better shot. And he knew what he had to do. He took the job, with conditions, with honesty, with a commitment to never let another hospital or factory or neighborhood go dark because someone upstairs cared more about profit than people. As Jake walked out into the sunlight streets, a mess, but hope-breaking through didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd been handed the chance to fix more than just machines. Maybe even fix a little piece of history. And you reading this, what would you have done? Walk away or stay and change things from the inside. Sometimes the right answer isn't obvious. And sometimes justice looks like a man in grease-stained coveralls choosing to keep the lights on for everybody else, even when it hurts. Let me know what you think, because I swear, stories like this, they don't just belong to one man. They belong to every one of us who's ever had to decide whether to forgive, whether to fight, or whether to keep moving forward, no matter how dark it gets. If you've got thoughts on right and wrong, on justice, or what a community owes its people, don't just scroll by. Drop your take below, because trust me, these are the questions we all need to ask before the lights go out again.